Okay, I think we're recording. Welcome to the Flux
Yes.
Dev Meeting for June 5th, 2024. We've had a little bit of a discussion off camera. Unfortunately, we forgot to record the first 10 or so minutes, but we've been discussing about Sunny, do you want to summarize really briefly?
We're discussing about the Git passwordless authentication RFC and what are other details we want to add in that RFC, and maybe some examples of code changes that will be required for implementing this, and also some user stories. Anything else?
Yeah, something else is that you were talking about AWS code commit.
Right. So I looked into the previous RFC that has been closed. Mentioned that we cannot do this in AWS because AWS uses a Git helper. So we'll just introduce other providers except AWS. And when I looked into the AWS helper, it's written in Python, but it's not doing much. It's just taking the URL, Git URL, but the Git URL is not HTTP. In this case, it's a custom protocol, code commit, I think, code commit : / and it's a Git, what is it called? Git has some extension points, some Git helpers, I think. There's a Git HTTP helper, Git SSH helper, I think. So this is a similar helper where Git will call this helper code, which is implemented in Python, which will convert the code commit URL to a HTTP URL, but it's a signed AWS URL using the user's credentials. And then this is passed to the Git's native HTTP remote helper to actually do the cloning. And this is just a small code that we can write in Go as well and do the same. There's no reason it will not work. And the documentation of Git remote code commit says that they support this for user IAM user accounts and roles as well. So it should just work. It's just in Python, you just have to write it in Go. So it can be done, but I think the roadmap says we'll implement GitHub and Azure for the next release. So we can just write briefly about how it will be done for AWS and implement it later.
Yep.
Sounds right?
Yeah, I mean, for the implementation, we can postpone it even for GCP until we know more. We just, we can have a section about it, make sure it works with the API that we are thinking about.
I'll sometime, maybe in a few weeks, I'll give it a try. I'll try to convert that Python code into Go code and see if it works. And if it works, we can just add it in package repository, maybe. We'll see. We'll have to add some tests as well. Anyway, what else?
Hello. So I just noticed something. I'm looking at the RFC and I realized that for GitHub and GitLab, we use the app feature, right? And it still requires having a secret, one that people would probably need to rotate. So I was wondering, because in the beginning of the RFC, it says that, I mean, it's all about passwordless authentication, right? So I was wondering, how does this work? I mean, isn't the benefit that, maybe it's just that GitHub and GitLab don't have support for that, right?
Yeah,
I guess.
the way they do it, for GitLab, you're still looking at it because I'm not 100% sure it works, actually. I've seen the documentation trying to make sense of it. But for GitHub, you have a GitHub apps that needs a token, an access token, and an application ID. But this one is the one for the GitHub apps. So it's, well, you have to rotate it, I guess, but it's not tied to any user. It's tied to the GitHub apps. So you don't have any user behind that has to provide its own credentials for the application. And then when you want to access a Git repo, so you need to provide, you need the GitHub apps to be able to, or to request a token that has a scope that is needed. Like for GitHub, the scope would be repository read. So the token then will be requested by the GitHub apps for the actual use case you have for it. So it's a token that is used once, and then every time you have a new token, so you don't have to have a static token for that part. But just for the GitHub apps access key, you need to rotate it.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, like, but in the case of like Google and Azure, are we gonna be able to have an implementation that is completely passwordless, like no secrets at all?
It's workload
Yes.
identity.
For GCP and Azure, well, there is a secret that is that.
Delay, something is wrong with your microphone.
Should be the network. That
Or-
happens with network.
I just saw that workload identity federation for GKE is unsupported for cloud source repositories.
It's federated identity is not supported, but you can still use workload identity within your account.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you can. I tested it. It just works.
Oh, that's great. I see.
Federated
use
would be the user accounts would be somewhere else outside of GCP.
Mhm.
Like you can
Yeah.
use Active Directory in AWS. So
I guess we
similar.
basically just need to wait until GitHub and GitLab do something decent here, right? Like, and actually implement a way where we can use something like OIDC, right? Like just like the same way.
That's what we are adding. So GitHub and wait, they're not adding.
I think the challenge is
that is supported.
GitHub doesn't actually provide you with a machine that they can identify that, like GKE and AWS will.
Yeah, because like in GKE and I mean the three major cloud providers, you're basically using a service account token, right? Like issue it with the audience for the other thing, right? So it should be something like that.
So what you get with GitHub, with a GitHub app, is you get a secret that allows you to provision scoped token that is short-lived. And that is the same thing technologically, but the difference is that you need a secret in order to start that, to bootstrap it.
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's not great, right? Like that misses the point, basically.
Well, it seems less useful, but when you think about those environments where you might be able to do that, we're talking about GitHub Actions. And so what do you get there? You actually get an ephemeral token, a GitHub token that is scoped, that can be repurposed and used for other purposes, even tied to other repos. So you really do have that, but you wouldn't use it in a Flux CLI unless as a GitHub app, right? That's the difference. You just use it; it's already there, the token, and scope it down the way you need in a GitHub action. So I'm not sure what there is for them to provide in between, unless they're going to become a cloud provider.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, it's
no
basically
plans.
like a limitation on their side, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. Yeah. Okay.
What's nice about this is that when you have the GitHub app, it's tied to some scopes, and if you revoke the GitHub apps, I mean, no one can use it anymore. It's not really a single user that can do it, but can we work it for everyone at the same time? That's pretty
So
nice.
as far
And
as
as Kingdom said,
sorry, go ahead.
it's actually the same thing. You can use when you have the service account with workload identity, you still need. Yeah, when you use workload identity, you still have a service account with token, just that it is in your cluster and the user don't have access to it. But it's the same process.
So as far as concrete use cases, I think there are basically three. There's image update automation that needs a read-write token. There is the basic repository source pull that only needs a read token. And then there's the Bootstrap workflow that I don't know if is in scope at this time for passwordless, but where you would need an admin just to leave room for it in
It's
the
not.
API.
It's not.
Yeah, I think like Bootstrap just uses a personal access token temporarily, right? It doesn't persist it anywhere. It's just for doing the Bootstrap like locally, right?
Well,
It generates a
you may
deploy
want
Well,
to be
key
not
and
able to
everything.
do a
temporarily.
bootstrap from
It
inside of a
depends.
job, but
Oh, right. Yeah.
When you do the bootstrap, it's either create SSH keys and put them into secrets, or you can use the token, the path, the personal access token, and put it into a secret as well, because it keep doing the reconciliation to make sure you can sync what you have in Git and cluster for the Flux system
so
namespace.
so
So you
to
keep
complete the
those.
picture in Weave GitOps Enterprise, there's the Bootstrap controller that requires we use the GitHub App Secret app for this, and it would be really nice if there was a Flux solution, but I don't know what shape it would take in the API. We don't really have anything like that in the API. There's no Bootstrap workflow or CRD.
Yeah, well, at the moment, it's out of scope. The bootstrap in the RFC.
For this RFC, it's definitely out of scope.
I was thinking if we add Bootstrap support, we will have to. So currently we have Bootstrap for Git providers, GitLab, GitHub. We'll also have to consider cloud providers. So you Bootstrap can, if you provide AWS credentials, Bootstrap can go and create the necessary roles and set up everything for you. But then that's a more complex thing to do.
Well, from the provisioning side, it's not more complex. It's just a different set of permissions that you give the app. But from the Flux side and the API side, it's definitely more complex. There's nowhere to hook into that now at all. So it would mean a completely new API.
It won't be, depends on how you want to implement. You can, no. I was thinking you can embed Terraform, and I don't think it's needed. Anyway, so fine. I think there are ways you can do, but it will be very complicated on the CLI side. Regarding OIDC, I was thinking you can use OIDC from GitHub to access, or GitHub workflows to access Git repository that's running in AWS code commit. But in this case, the GitHub providers use case is your workload is running in AWS, you want to access it in GitHub, how do you perform it? OIDC. Oh, okay. Now I was also thinking about categorizing these authentication mechanisms, because the AWS or the actual cloud providers, they use OIDC and GitHub uses OAuth. They're not exactly the same, but in this RFC, we are trying to bring them together. So will you be here for discussing the cache package, or your battery is low?
Well, I'm still here, but at some point, it will just die.
Anything else regarding Git passwordless RFC? Or we can go to the next.
Okay.
Or wait, since Sule may drop soon, let's talk about cache and then we can go to this proxy. Matthias, is that okay if you have time?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. Let's talk about the cache package. What's the pull request number? Okay, it's a paste the link.
You want the number? 1 second.
766. I pasted it in the meeting document. So I've been reviewing this, and I think this will be the first generic code, Go generic code in Flux, right?
Yes, I think so.
Wait, you pasted some other link. Is it at 766? Anyway, it's 766. So I don't have experience with generics. I was learning and while reviewing this. So I was very confused, but now I accept the generics. Right now, I'm mostly thinking about the interface. Do we really need client Go style of cache where you pass a partial object and you receive the full object from the cache? I was looking at the way controller runtimes client does it, or they have a use case where they cache all the objects that your controller has ever interacted with. And they put everything in cache, and whenever you need it, you take it out of the cache. But for our use case, do we have a need to do such things where you give the cache a partial object and get a full?
Well, our use case, we have several use cases. The first use case we're thinking about is that every time you retrieve a credential token from a cloud provider, you want to cache it, so you want to cache authenticator structures with the credential the expiration time into our cache. That's the first use case we have in Flux package, OCI, and tomorrow in Flux package with the Git passwordless as well. The second use case is today in source controller, we have a cache package into internal that we use to cache Helm indexes. So we want to get rid of that and use our cache to be able to store Helm indexes as well. The third use case is for image automation. We use Badger today in order to cache repository tags. And you want to get rid of Badger because the use case is pretty simple and use our expiration cache as well for those tags. So we have 3 different structures at least that we have needs for this cache. And that's why we have an interface, because under the hood, under it, sorry, for the Helm indexes and even things, we want expiration. But actually for Helm indexes, Stefan was saying that expiration is maybe not great. What you want is less frequently used, because then we can just get rid of get rid of the other indexes. And so we came, so we have actually two caches, but for the code in itself, we want to have the same implementation everywhere, the same way of calling it. So we can just have an interface and then the code is the same everywhere. That's why we came up with the interface. And then looking at the interface, we wanted to add also a dynamic way of retrieving keys, because, for example, in source controller with multi-tenancy, we want to be able to uniquely identify keys based on kind, name, and namespace. But for the tokens, for example, maybe we don't want to do this because it's tied to the service account. So we have two different ways of retrieving keys. That's why I have put the key function. And that's when I found out about, well, I knew about it, but that's when I went to the Kubernetes cache interface.
But these three use cases, in none of them we cache the Kubernetes object, right? So do we need?
We don't cache the Kubernetes object today, but for the Helm index, for example, we could have the Helm index as part of a subset of the Kubernetes object, because the Helm index is always tied to a repository. So we could have a repository, something like a Helm repository structure, where we would keep the namespace, the kind, and the name, and then we just would put the Helm index. So we would still use those three fields in order to process the.
So that's like creating a namespace within the cache, right? If you do it that way, instead of having an arbitrary key to save the index. But do we need namespacing for storing the index? Index is just YAML, right? Or JSON.
You need namespacing. You need namespacing because you have an index is tied to Helm repository, and a Helm repository is namespace. So if you have two Helm repositories that have the same name but in different namespace, you need namespace to uniquely identify them.
But that doesn't
that might
require.
Happen.
Okay, but that doesn't require adding the Helm index, which is some JSON, not Kubernetes object, to be strictly associated with Kubernetes object data type.
No, it doesn't require it. Just that in future, if you have a use case where we need to cache Kubernetes objects, it just works because
I think
we use but at today we don't require that. That's true.
So the Kubernetes or the controller runtime client, the default that you create, has a cache, and we already use it everywhere. So adding this support seems weird to me. We need to do it. And if you remove it, I was thinking, what did it look like? It would become very simple. The interface would become really simple.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the current cache is between the API server and our controllers, right? If you would need to cache, I don't see why we would need to cache a Kubernetes object, actually. That's true.
I think you can import the control runtime cache package and change how it interacts with the API server. Maybe you can stop it from interacting with the API server. I think you can do that. Need to check. But again,
well, you can't, but you can. There is an option in control runtime when you don't want to retrieve object from the cache, but retrieve them directly from the API server. There's an option for that, but I think the cache is still instantiated.
But maybe consider it again. If we don't have a use case today, do we need to add this thing right now and make the
No.
interface so complicated? Don't have to decide now.
Well, we can, even though we can say that we don't need anything related to caching Kubernetes object. And what we would need to do is the identifiable object structure. We can get rid of that. But because all the function in the interface, they just accept an object of type any for the generics. But if you
That's
get
okay.
rid of, yeah, so we could keep only that, reduce the number of function, but then would it make it less? Well, you would have less code for sure, but I'm not sure it would make it less complicated. As long as we use the generics, I mean, it's really cheap. It will.
I think generic is okay. Generics is fine. But things like add and update, separate methods for add and update, for a simple cache interface seems weird, right? Like add and update in case of Kubernetes, maybe it makes sense. But for our use case, do we need two separate methods, add and update?
Look, yeah. For example, I have an index. The Helm index key is based on the Helm repository namespace unkind. So it's unique. If I have a new version of the index, it's the same key. So I'm just going to update because the index has changed, but the key is the same. I'm not going to add a new one because, well, because the same key, it would tell me that the key already exists. So I need to update it because I have a new version of the index when I have a new reconciliation.
Okay, I did not think of that.
So for Helm indexes, we need it, and for repository tags as well. I think we would need it.
For this specific Helm index use case, you would not create the key based on the content of the index, but the Helm repository details, right? The namespace of the Helm repository. So when you update, when you add an update, you will have a static key built based on the Helm repository namespace kind. So you can find the exact index that you want to update, right? Update or add. So you need, why do you need separate add and update in that case?
Well, I would say make it simpler because otherwise in add, you have to take it back on the two logics. Am I updating or am I adding a new value? And the way we do it right now is it's only adding new values. If the key already exists, I'm just returning that the key is already there. I'm not adding the new value. I'm not changing, updating. And update is really solely really just for updating. No, update is not really only.
Oh, he just got disconnected.
That was the end of his battery, apparently.
I'm just trying to simplify the cache interface. Many months ago, we had another implementation where the cache was really simple. Like the interface had just two methods, set and get, but the new cache is based on Kubernetes client go cache, which has a lot of methods, which I think we don't really need. So I'm just trying to understand, and maybe convince to make it more simple. Because if you implement your new cache, you have to implement so many methods of the interface. It should have been easier, the cache. It's complicated.
I think Solab dropped. because of the
Ah.
matrix.
He messaged me. Okay, we can discuss later. Matthias.
Hello.
Hmm.
Yeah, so actually I just wanted to report that I made progress on the task for implementing the spec.proxy secret ref API for Bucket for the generic provider. Actually, Stefan mentioned that we should probably support pro providers in this case, but I'm starting with generic because it's probably the easier one. But I was already able to test this locally in a local cluster. I just spinned a min.io and I coded an HTTP proxy using the standard library Golang standard library utilities here super quick and was able to test it. Like I'm logging the request and I can see everything that I need to see that it's working. The bucket object also reports successfully reconciled and I can download the artifact and see the content and everything. So it's working. I just was wondering, how can I test this in the code? Like last time, Sunny suggested some private key infrastructure for the TLS secret that worked really well for the implementation, like for the tests. I was wondering if there's anything similar for proxy. Do you have any kind of HTTP
There
proxy
is.
infrastructure for testing in Source Controller already?
I don't remember where it is, but there is something. Wait, before that, I missed what you said. What proxy did you use for
So
manual testing?
So yeah, just like the the Git repositories source has this proxy secret ref field where you can specify an address, a username and password for basic auth, and like the Git repository operations use this proxy, to talk to the upstream Git server. And I'm implementing the same for the Bucket API, basically.
No, I'm asking which proxy server did you use? Squid
Oh,
proxy or
sorry.
something else?
I used one, as I mentioned, I just wrote one super quick here in Go. I used, so in Go, the standard library has this HTTP util package, and it has this new single host reverse proxy, and it just takes a URL, the target URL. So in this case, this target URL would be, let's say, a min.io service
It
URL.
does a reverse proxy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You could have, like, if you're not using Go, you could have use Nginx or Caddy or something else to do the same, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
could have used lots of options, but I don't know, like when I was trying to test this last night, I thought the fastest way was to write a super small proxy here in Go.
we, where is it? In package repository under Git module or Git package, I think we use Go proxy somewhere. Need to check.
In Source Controller?
No, in the package repository. Package
In the package
repository has a
repository, okay.
Git directory, and I think there, right, I found it. Under git/go git/internal test, we have a HTTP proxy test there.
Okay, so it's under Git, but it's not necessarily related to Git, right? So
It's
I
not,
can
it's
use
just
this.
Go proxy. It's a generic
Go
Go proxy.
Got it.
Link.
Okay. Cool.
Did you find
Taking a
the
look.
link? Go git
Uh,
internal test.
yeah, I'm opening the package repository here. So
I can paste the link.
okay. You said it's in the package repository under Git and Go
I
Git?
pasted the link in the meeting doc.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, in the doc? Oh, okay, I see.
So
Okay,
that's how
package
we
Git.
do tests for proxy in the existing Go Git implementation.
Nice. Cool.
So it randomly, it will randomly pick a port number and run a proxy server, and then you can configure that in your Git repository.
Uh-huh. I'm wondering like this one sounds I mean I'm seeing some Git related stuff in this setup Git. What should I be looking at? Setup Git proxy here? And there's this.
Right. Setup Git proxy is for redirecting for proxying the Git repository. You can open the upstream package, right? Go proxy package.
Go
See, it's
proxy.
just the
Okay,
HTTP proxy library, and you can
cool.
type it to whatever you want, mini or
Cool.
whatever.
Okay, cool.
There's some
Okay,
examples in
so,
the repo.
yeah, I can see it here. Cool. Go proxy, new proxy HTTP server. Okay. So, so should I basically use this package in source controller?
Mhm. Ah, I
Okay.
think you can, the existing bucket test runs a Docker container and runs menu in that, right? And
Yeah,
you
you mean the MinIO test?
uh-huh.
Yeah, the MinIO test is spinning up MinIO container, yeah.
So maybe you have to run this HTTP proxy and connect it to the Minio container, and then try to access
Yeah,
it through the proxy.
and in this case, I'm wondering, like, I can probably run this proxy in memory without a container, right?
Should be. No, this proxy
Yeah.
need not be in a container. It will be
Yeah,
in the same test Go process itself. It's a Go
yeah. I don't
library.
need a container for this one. Yeah,
No.
yeah. Cool.
It'll be another Go routine handling the HTTP request.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks. Yeah,
Did
that's
you
exactly
answer
the
this?
pointer I wanted. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was asking if you wanted to discuss another RFC that you have proposed. I have not looked into it.
Oh yeah, the metadata for notification controller, right?
Event and custom events.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I have to drop in 7 minutes because I have another
Okay.
meeting, but if there's anything we can discuss in that time, for sure. Like
I
I
have
think
not looked
nobody
into the
made any
RFC.
comments there yet. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Busy with other things.
Yeah. But is there anything there that you already spotted that you would like to bring up?
Nothing. I just glanced through it. User stories. I think you have pasted links. It would be nice to I write something and then link it to those issues. But I have not read the whole thing, so I cannot say anything right now.
Cool. Yeah, I think I linked to a couple of issues. Let me see. Um, yeah, in the user stories section, I put two issues there. I mean the one I opened a long time ago, and the comment that
Comment from the user, right?
yeah, from the user and the pull request that we closed also a long time ago. That's the only
Yeah.
two that I'm aware of, honestly. But if anybody knows of any other related issue, would
Yeah, I think
appreciate the
you
pointer.
can describe whatever the user has commented.
Oh, cool.
In
Like,
some
you mean
words
like,
and write it there.
got it in the same section, like close to the
Mhm.
link?
I don't think you need to paste the link as it's sort of just describe what his use case is.
Oh,
like
okay. So you
we
think I should
deploy and
remove the
then
link?
hey, you can keep the link if you want to, but
Oh,
you can
okay.
describe it yourself to the user.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Like their
Cool.
use case. They wanted to
Uh-huh.
close the loop, right? We deploy it and then you know that it's deployed. You just write that down in words.
Right, right. Yeah, I mentioned briefly about like in the motivation section. Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure I put like the the right content in the right sections there, but like in the motivation one, the second point is about when implementing integrations, users often wish to embed various pieces of information in Flux objects that would help them identify entities or resources that are part of their integrations. For example, a deployment in the GitHub API. So like this is basically like the exactly what the comment from the user is, but with less details. Like it's, I mean,
You can look at some other RFCs where we have a way of writing the user story. Like the user wants to do this, and then we say, this is how you do this. You can just write the same thing in a different structure. It'll be the same. Look at some other RFCs where we have this.
cool, cool. I can do that.
When I go through this, I'll comment about formatting and see. But for now, nothing.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah. So if you guys could also make some comments there, it would also help. Cool.
Kingdom, you have
Yeah,
another
okay.
topic?
I just added some notes about an issue that I've been working through with someone, who that person has already helped. They've been able to sign their Bootstrap commit, with Flux Bootstrap. We've uncovered when we were trying to figure out why it wasn't working for them, that the documentation isn't very clear. And I read as much code as I could to try to understand exactly how this feature works. And then I went a little bit further and actually tried it myself, and had a heck of a time figuring out exactly how to use Bootstrap GPG. But we did ultimately figure out that it works, at least for the simple use case that we had. So there are a couple of issues. There's one issue that I linked that someone is trying to do something a little bit different. I don't exactly understand what it is, but it's something like a certify key and a signing key where those permissions are separate. I don't know if anyone has looked at that at all, or if there are more modern GPG libraries that we could incorporate. Uh, so it looks like a lot of people are giving up when they try to do this. And we can improve the documentation so much, but if it only gets us to a point where it's still not really usable, that's not much of an improvement. So the thing that people want to do, I guess, is to use YubiKeys. So they don't actually give the key over and the key isn't in a key file or key ring. The way that this feature works currently, you have to pass in 3 values: keyring file, key ID, which has to be in a specific 16 character format, and a passphrase, which the thing the person was apparently doing, they were using a passphraseless key, and they thought that meant they could omit passphrase, but that did not work.
But when we do Bootstrap using SSH, the private key is stored in the secret, right? In this case, even if they want to keep it in YubiKey, they will have to extract it, right? Extract the private key. And I don't think YubiKey allows that. YubiKey can sign things, but it will never let you extract the private key, right?
Well, so isn't there a Go library that we can use to sign? We don't actually need the key, right? We just need the signature. on the commit.
No, then we need the one private key.
Is there not a way to use YubiKey for signing commits interactively?
I don't think so. I think using your main private key, you can create a signing key, but the signing key will also have its private key, and you have to upload the whole private key into the secret. That's my understanding.
So we don't have documentation for any of this currently. We have 3
Uh,
flags that are apparently global flags that it's not even clear from using these flags that you'll invoke the signing behavior. So
but in this case, I'm not very familiar with GPG. Like I don't use it on a daily basis. But if I just know some theory, if I have a signing key and I have a main key separate, I would just provide my signing key to Flux. I will not use my main key, the master key, to do anything here. The signing key would be enough.
I don't know enough about GPG to dispute any of what you just said, or to say if that makes sense or not, in terms of what this person is asking for. I don't have a YubiKey, so it's not a use case that I can test or really delve into. But we definitely need to add docs for the functionality that does exist. And maybe maybe a couple of examples on different configurations where you will or won't have a keyring file, because
Oh, wait, now I see.
like, people are giving up.
So this is sorry, GPT verification. You just need public key, but you don't need the private key. You need private key when you are signing and committing, pushing commits.
So
Right.
the verification is one thing. Actually verifying that commits are signed, I don't think anyone has a problem with that, because you load a public key into the secret and you give that to Flux and it verifies it. But Bootstrap is what these people are actually trying to do. They want their Bootstrap commit to be signed, which it
Oh,
wasn't clear to me
that
from the
is right.
docs that we actually support that, and we do.
Okay, in that case, we are creating new commits. So those are signed, and we need the private key. I don't think.
I'm not really convinced of that, because I think if you have a YubiKey and you have Git, you can probably produce a signed commit. So I'm sure that there must be a way to do that from Go as well. We're talking about an interactive process. When you run Bootstrap, it's an interactive process.
After bootstrapping, Flux will be in that cluster. And whenever there is an update or whenever things need to change.
Right, image update automation has to produce signed commits too if you're going to use image update automation, but that's
so
not
it
what
needs a
people are
private
worried
key.
about.
Okay.
And I don't think that we would support image update automation with a YubiKey. That wouldn't make any sense at all. You would export a key and Flux would definitely use the key in the cluster without a YubiKey. I think that makes sense, if that's what you're saying.
Okay. So I think we can do something to maybe paste the key or something. You insert your YubiKey and it'll write something and you pass it to GPT. I think it will work that way. But I cannot think of it now. Right, I understood what you're saying. Okay,
That's a separate tangent. My really main concern is to document what we can do with the existing code. But if there are improvements we can make, I want to explore that too. That's it from me. And that is the last item on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about today? Nope.
Adam, are you
No,
the Adam?
I'm all good for today.
Oh, you're the same Adam, right?
Yep, from the city events. Yeah.
Oh, CD events.
Yep, I'll probably open up a pull request for the ORFC later today or tomorrow.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us.